This forested area is kind of just north of the California border. It's in the Fremont-Wainema National Forest. It's a 1.5 million acre project area. And this is also what is called the Sustained Yield Unit, and it's a congressional designation for this forested area. And there's a pretty strong collaborative down in that area. So the Nature Conservancy has been working closely with that collaborative. And here you can see the collaborative Sustained Yield Unit boundary in gray, and then kind of the project area that we chose to look at with red around all of that. One project that we kind of looked at and worked with is around the structure of the forest and kind of looking at where we would do hazardous fuels, abatement, and treatments kind of to really diminish fire activity and put something in context that's a little more ecologically appropriate and diminish fire behaviors. So in this slide you can kind of get an example of what the landscape looks like in the Lakeview Sustained Yield Unit and the stewardship area. You've got these meadows and marshlands that will roll up into kind of rolling hills with lodgepole and ponderosa mixture. And this area has been kind of hit pretty hard by beetle kill, and so you can see a lot of lodgepole is in the red area. We call it the red and dead, and that's a lot of your beetle kill. Here's kind of another example of another area that you're getting where you're getting overly dense ponderosa pine stands with some of these old legacy pondos kind of had some ingrowth and is just under kind of stress from a quantity of trees that's way more than a historical system would have been for some of these frequent fire forests. And this is kind of a result. When a fire does hit, we are seeing much higher severity fire. The conditions are uncharacteristic, and so the fire behavior becomes uncharacteristic. This is what we'd like to see, these more open park-like stands with the big trees and native grasses underneath that. Three projects that we kind of undertook were deriving three different scenarios based on one, the collaborative that I mentioned earlier, one which is kind of the TNC focused restoration scenario, looking at where are areas that are most departed from the historical conditions and restoration activities could take place. And then the other is using kind of the buzzword of spots or the strategic placement of treatments and looking at where would modeling fire behavior and strategically placing thinning or restoration treatments in those areas diminish or decrease that fire behavior activity. To model these fire behaviors and then look at how restoration treatments within those took place, we needed kind of a whole stack, or what we call like the grid sandwich of data, and that includes elevation, slope, aspect, your fuel models, canopy cover, canopy height, canopy base height, and then the crown bulk density. And all of those are kind of put into one mega file that is called an LCP, or a landscape file. That stack of data, the LCP, is used in a couple programs. We used it primarily in FlamMap for modeling the fire behavior. The two things that we really looked at grabbing from that would be the crown fire activity and the flame length, as well as the number or the probability of fire, and that's based on these random ignitions across the landscape. Again, the measures we used kind of look at this fire activity was a combination of fire hazard and then fire probability. And the fire hazard was a matrix we put together based on flame length and crown fire activity, and then the fire probability was just its own run. And again, all of these came out of the FlamMap software that we then put in the GIS. So now that we're in the GIS, I thought I could give a little context and show you how this worked. And so again, we had a restoration priority scenario, and so I've turned that one on, and this is a scenario that we generated with the Nature Conservancy, prioritizing our frequent fire forests that are departed, which are within some of these portfolio sites which TNC's identified as high biodiversity important locations. So what you're seeing here is these dark burnt orange pixels, and anywhere that you see that is an area that we would do a restoration or a thinning treatment. And then here we have the collaborative scenario. It's more spread out. It's what the collaborative group identified within their process as areas they'd like to see activities or treatments occur. And then the treatment optimization, or the spatial, the spots model of where we want to see those strategic placement of treatments on the landscape. So each of these are different places that we would see an activity or a thinning project go, and that all went into FlamMap, and we calculated what we were showing here as the hazard. And so here was that based on that matrix of crown fire activity versus flame length, and this is identifying areas with high hazard based on the current condition. And then we repeated this process for areas based on these different treatment scenarios on top, and looked at how the hazard rating changed from the current one to post or hypothetical management activity, and allowed us a tool to kind of game out and look at the way the future would be based on these variable management scenarios.